I am ready.
Positive?
Positive.
Born ready?
Born ready.
Alright, we're ready. Hello, Riveters! Red here, conducting my first Rivetview. You might recognize this guy, Trydus. Yeah, apparently he works here. Or at
Sometimes.
least that's what we tell him. And Trydus has just recently gotten back from a trip to not here. And yeah, so I was going to interview him about it, see how it went. Where did you go, Trydus?
Well, Riveters, I journeyed over to the distant and wonderful continent of Europe. Not to be confused with Europa, the moon of
Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
See, star nerd.
Mm-hmm. So, that's where I was. I visited 2 countries in Europe, both Switzerland and Italy.
Nice. So, once you decided that you were going to make this trip, like, what was your first step to actually doing it?
As far as what was my first step to actually, once I decided?
Yeah. Post decision. Because I mean, this wasn't a normal like travel agent trip, right?
Not by any means.
Yeah. So I mean, you mused about this for a while as a pipe dream. Tell us about the point at which it stopped being a pipe dream, started being a reality, in our first move in that direction.
Okay, so that can make a whole story in upon itself. I'll do my best to give you the cliff notes. So, dissatisfied with where I was in life and in my job, this has always been a dream of mine to undertake. Ever since I was a wee little kid, I've always wanted to go to Italy. I cannot explain why. I've just always wanted to. It's a sense of a fernway. If you're not sure what the term fernway is, it's a basically it's longing for a place that you've never been before. Similar term is wanderlust, for example. Anyway, so I've always wanted to go there, and one day, very dissatisfied with what I was doing, I asked myself a very simple question: what would it actually take to get there? So I started digging, and I was digging some more, and before I'd researched and done all that, and figured out some things, like what the budget would look like, where I'd go, that kind of thing. But
So is that what you'd call your first step, with budgeting, or like, I'm fishing more for, I'm Trydus, I want to go to Europe. I'm Red, I also want to go to Europe. But the difference is you went to Europe.
Yeah.
And so the first step towards doing that, like, if I was going to attempt to repeat your process, what would be my first step? Like, how do you
make the decision to go, and it really concrete that in your mind, because it wasn't the research, and it wasn't the budgeting, it wasn't all that, because I'd done all that before. This is very previous, but it was actually make the decision that saying, come hell or high water, on this date I am going.
Okay.
Now this is when I could start planning, this is when I could start really researching, but that first decision, that actual thing I put, that anchor I put down, if you will,
Pick the date.
This is I'm going, and that's it.
Okay.
I had to make that very concrete in my mind, or else it never would have happened.
Well, and a lot of people, myself included, work best with deadlines, so I can see how that's a good approach.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of forces you into a time frame, if you will.
Indeed, it's I know some people, and I've read a lot of blogs and people talking about it. It's best to sometimes just like either pick the date or book the tickets and just not give yourself a way out. Right? like no matter what, this is going to happen. Oh crap!
You cannot escape your vacation.
Exactly right. There's Steve Cam from nerdfitness.com. I'm just reading his book right now, and one of the things he talks about is he went on a trip to Peru with his buddy. His buddy asked him if he wanted to go with, and he said, sure, it's 3 weeks away. So, buy a ticket. And there he was, bought the ticket, and he had no way out, and there he was in Peru, and it was one of the greatest adventures of his life, and it spurred him to go on his epic quest of awesome, which is something he talks about in his book, and then he ended up traveling to several dozen countries right after that.
Nice.
But that's one thing he talks about, is that you just gotta say yes right now, and then figure it out.
So post decision, post yes, post date. How much time did you put into just like picking where you were going to go, choosing? I mean, I know you'd mentioned you visited 2 countries. Now, initially, when you brought this up back in the day, it was just going to be Italy.
Correct.
So you wound up in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
When did that curveball happen? What spurred that?
So here's the thing about travel, and you'll find this to be the case, especially if you're trying to do budget travel. Flying direct to a country, depending on the country, may not be the most cost-effective way to do it. For example, when I was picking my tickets to Italy, they were in the $900 to $1,400 range, give or take, depending on where you go. If this is direct to Rome, if this is direct to Venice, Milan, whatever, it was in that range. The idea situation was I was probably just going to fly to Milan and then go from there. But I found out that if I flew to Switzerland, which is right next to Italy,
Northern border, for those of you geography challenged,
and if I just trained over to Italy, it would save me several $100s. So it was a $550 plane ticket. I had a little bit of an edge on this, and I can talk about this later. But that was the plane ticket, and then when I got there to Zurich, I was able to train over to Italy for another extra €100, which is about $110, give or take, with that exchange rate. So, in essence, it was much cheaper for me to go to Zurich and then train over than it was to just fly directly into Italy. Now, that being said, there was a time cost there too. But hey, here's the deal: Zurich in Switzerland itself is still a very cool country and a very cool place to visit. So I don't feel like I lost anything at all.
Well, that's good. So, and this was your first time out of the country?
First time. I've been to Canada before, and I've been to Mexico, Jamaica, and Caymans, but this is the first time on that side of the world, basically.
Okay, yeah, I'd forgotten it. Yeah. And I read our blog. Weird. Yeah. So, first time in Europe. What was your first impression off the plane?
First impression off the plane. Oh fuck! I'm in a foreign country now, on the other side of the world, separated from literally everything that I have, except for what's on my back. And everybody speaks German right now. And then, of course, you start talking to them, and then they all speak English too. It's like, all right, cool. But seriously, so my first impressions off the plane, it was essentially, okay, prioritize next to you. I'm here for a day. I know I'm here for a day, and I know I got to get over to Italy. So I figure, get off the plane, get into Zurich, because the Zurich airport is several miles away from the actual Zurich city center. So it's right on the outside. So I have to get into Zurich, and then I have to also find my way to Italy, to Milan at some point, so I figure I'd train in Milan. Mm-hmm. First major, on that side of the border, really one of the first major cities. So what I did was I went to buy a train ticket to Milan, so I got that also. I took the latest train I could, which was about 7 p.m., and I then thought, okay, I need to talk to somebody and figure out what do I do in this country, or what do I do in Zurich for a day, right? It was just 9 o'clock in the morning, so I had 10 or so hours to kill. So went to the information desk. There's an information kind of area where they give you tourist propaganda and all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. You'll find this at most major airports. There's always somebody or something like this. And I asked the gal who was there. And this, so to give you an idea of a first impression of Swiss culture, this was a lot of fun. I asked the gal, who was the information gal, was standing there, and started talking to her, and she gave me a map of Zurich and said, my basic question was, where can a guy get a good cup of coffee and hang out for X amount of time, just kind of really get the feel, right? Where's the best cup of coffee in Zurich? So she said go to Old Town, but the Old Town is an older district of Zurich, which is the oldest town where most of the Gothic architecture is, that kind of thing. Really, really cool stuff. But right when we started talking, this other European gal, I want to say she was French, but just don't quote me on that. She comes up and starts talking to the information gal, and she says, "Excuse me, I'm talking to this gentleman here." Just no sense of humor, and then turns back to me. Apologies. Anyway, and I'm just like, damn.
Militant etiquette.
Yeah, just boom. Like, all right then, down to business. like I think I'm gonna like this place. It was an interesting first impression of Swiss culture. They are very efficient people. Very like you've heard the term run like a Swiss watch or like a run like a clock, whatever. And the Swiss watches are very efficient and always working, or however you want to say that. But when you get into their culture, when you walk around one of their cities like Zurich, I mean they are very efficient people. I mean they're one thing I've learned from this trip, and I apologize if I'm getting too far in the weeds here, but one thing I've learned from this trip is you can learn a lot about a people by watching their traffic. It's very interesting. And so Swiss traffic is very efficient. The roadways, their streets, their turn signals, everything, very efficient. One notable difference between us and Switzerland, the U.S. and Switzerland, and is at their stoplights, they'll have it go yellow and go to red, and then they'll have it go yellow again, and then green, which is very interesting.
So when, before it goes green, I wonder what the laws are around that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, at least here in Minnesota, when you encounter a yellow light, for most people that means stomp it and see if you can get through before it goes red.
Pretty much.
So if they're going to give you a warning from red to green, I wonder if certain personalities do that too.
They don't, because the people. So I spent some time in Switzerland, and I spent some time with a couple of different Swiss drivers, and they're very much of the mindset of this is the caution light, and so we were going to either prepare to stop or prepare to go, and this is what this is.
Very much on a schedule.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting people, and they're fast. They're lovely people. Absolutely, I had nothing but good experiences with the Swiss.
Cool. So, it's safe to say that when you got off the plane, you're pretty nervous. So did that subside at all? Like, what point did you start feeling confident in the ground underneath you, so to speak?
Okay. So, so you know me. You and I have been friends for a couple of decades. Mm-hmm. I'm a pretty confident person, or at least I've been told that.
Yeah.
Okay. That being said, I took a lot of that confidence with me, and it was very important to me to have the mindset of, whatever situation I'm going to get into, I'm going to be able to figure my way out of it. I will survive. I'll figure it out. I've got enough with me that I can make this work. But that being said, when you get there and you're by yourself. You have limited resources. You don't have access to that much money, whatever you have on you. Plus, you could have credit cards in your bank account and all that, but you watch out for transaction fees and all that. Plus, I maintained a pretty tight budget. So, I only have so much money. I only have so much resources on me. I only have a few pairs of clothes. I don't have many tools on me. I certainly don't have a weapon on me or anything like that. So, I have to make sure I'm prepared for any situation. So, you're in a country and you're surrounded by people who don't speak your language, or at least it appears that way. I find out much later that most people in customer service roles, especially, speak some variation of English or some level of English. So you can at least be able to
get the basics done.
Yeah, find the bathroom, find the airport, whatever, right? And you can kind of figure it out. Because after a while, I started figuring out the basic Swiss words and that kind of thing. I figured out what the word for airport was. Now I can't remember, but at the time, yeah, it was like I was able to ask that question, right? Where is the airport? Where is this? Where is that? So I did have to end up asking that question when I left because of the train system. So when you're in that situation, regardless of how prepared you are, there is really no level of training or preparedness you can do to be completely 100% rock solid prepared. When you're in that situation, when you're in a place, you're thousands of miles away from home, you're away from all your friends. I had my cell phone with me, but it was in airplane mode, and I didn't have an Italian or Swiss SIM, so I didn't switch over. I wasn't able to use data or anything like that. So, I mean, the only time I could really ever do anything was if I had access to Wi-Fi. So I was pretty much cut off, too. So I had to rely on my wits. I had to rely on my ability to communicate with people, and basic navigational skills, that kind of thing. I'll give you an example. when I left the train, I took the train from the Zurich airport to Zurich HB, which is Zurich's main hub train station, right in the center. There is not the only stop on that way. So I got off the train at the station before, and I didn't realize that had happened. I thought that was Zurich HB. It was not. So I'm looking around, and it's basically a station. It's kind of almost not in the middle of nowhere, but it certainly does not look like a main station. So I'm kind of sitting there, shit.
Looking around like, this does not look important enough.
Exactly. It's exactly right. Like, it just looks like a little stop-off point. So I'm kind of like, confused and looking at the map the information gal gave me, and kind of thinking, okay, well, if I got off this train, do I know if another train's coming? I don't know. I don't know the train schedule. I don't know. I mean, I assume it's back and forth pretty frequently.
Did you go too far? Not far enough?
Exactly. And then also, if I'm assuming I'm here, then how long would it take me to walk over here? That kind of thing. Because that's another thing that you kind of got used to, is that it's not that the distance, it obviously changes, it's always the same anywhere you go, but is really trying to understand how far things are in relevance to the map that you have, and that kind of thing.
Well, I presume most of the signs are in kilometers, so...
They are.
So we're used to, even those of us that are familiar with the metric system, we get used to estimating in miles, so someone says... I mean, I would find myself, at least, someone gave me a distance in clicks, I would...
Mm-hmm.
I would probably still convert it in my phone and be like,
yeah,
to give myself a better...
Right, because I was thinking to myself, 3 kilometers is roughly a mile, so thinking, okay, well, if it's this and it's this, I kind of had a little bit of mental conversion going on, but it's still, that initial shock really messes with you, right, because everything's different. And so I'm staring at this map, and I must have a confused look on my face. Because this little Swiss gal comes up to me. This is a gal probably in her 60s, and she said, "Do you need help?" I said, "Yes, I do." I have no idea where I am, and I am so glad you speak English. And so she was able to tell me that I was not at the right place and just wait for the next train. Also, the other thing is my ticket was still valid to get to the next one, to the next station, so it didn't matter anyway. So I could just hop on and hop off, not a big deal. So 10 minutes later, the train came, and I was there. And so then I get into the train station, and this is where, now I'm coming around to actually answer your question. This is where it really became real for me, because now it's maybe 10 o'clock. So now for the next 9 hours, I have to find something to do in a town that I've never been in before, in a country I've never been in before, where I'm surrounded by people who don't speak my language, and I can't read any of the signs. I don't know where anything is. I'm kind of just walking by the sun, and it was overcast, so that's even better. And so I'm looking at the map, and I'm thinking, well, if I just walk along the river, maybe there's some cool shit to see. And so that's where that little bit of that nervousness and then a little bit of that apprehension kind of sets in, because oh shit,
yep,
I'm here. What do I do with my time? Where do I go? What happens if somebody messes with me? I don't know. I don't know any of this stuff. I mean, there was a little bit of paranoia there, just because of simply not necessarily a fear of the unknown, but something like that. So, but the only thing I could do is just resolve to say, okay, I'm just going to do what I know how to do. Find stuff, discover stuff, explore, take pictures. And that was one of the first things I really held on to, is like, okay, well, if I have nothing else to do, at least I can take pictures of stuff. And then that's my, I can take that skill and just say, I'm going to hold on to this as something I know for a little bit, and then until I get used to the area, so I can at least be doing something that I know how to do. That's kind of the...
Probably a bit of psychological comfort in there to just... At least this doesn't change.
Right, exactly. And I got my camera, I've got my laptop, I've got everything I need here, So what I did was, that day I walked along the water. I just tried to discover and try to figure out what's different, what's exciting, what's the same. Took a bunch of pictures on the water, and then Zurich's really, the river that comes out of Zurich comes into a giant lake, and it's really cool to see. So I took a bunch of pictures of that. Their bathrooms are way different. They have really interestingly, futuristic looking bathrooms. They're porta shitters, but they just look really futuristic. They have LEDs and stuff inside them. It's really bizarre. So that was kind of fun. It was almost like an airport bathroom too, as you flush it. It was a vacuum.
Oh, an airplane vacuum.
Yeah, exactly. So then I walked around Old Town for a while, and I thought, and this is basically where this following habit started. And this habit was basically something that I continued throughout the whole trip. Find a coffee shop, find Wi-Fi, assess. So that's what I did. I walked around for an hour, found a coffee shop that I thought would be suitable, that at least appeared to have decent prices, at least based on what I could figure out, because most of the prices were in francs, not euros, or at least that appeared on the menu.
Yep.
So I had to kind of do that conversion too. So there's a tip right there. Get to understand the currency where you're going to go, or at least understand the exchange rates, because that way you can kind of figure out how much money things are at. Because they'll take euros, but
they're not going to tell you how much, or don't always tell you what the cost is in euros.
Yeah, something like that. Now they'll tell, like when you're actually paying for it, yeah, they'll tell you, but you might not understand from first glance of looking at a menu, for example.
And when you're on a tight budget, that really matters.
Exactly, and they'll also give you change back in francs. So
currency management.
Right. So so I found a place, sat down, and for like the next 4 hours, I just had some coffee. I figured out where I was, sent off communications, let everybody know I made it to Europe, that kind of thing. Upload all my pictures, and just kind of people watched for a while, and just kind of really switched my mindset and really started retooling how I was going to think until so I understood how I'd be able to do the rest of the trip. And I got to know the people that worked in the shop a little bit. I got to chat them up a little bit just to try to understand the culture and just make, for lack of a better term, make some temporary friends, that kind of thing. Tried their beer. They had what was it? I think it was an IPA. I thought they had a pretty good IPA. That's another thing that you're going to learn about Europe if you ever go there. I mean, culturally, it's pretty much you drink any time of the day. They don't really care. And also, if you
fits very well for me.
Right. And also, if you're big enough to get up to the bar, they'll serve you. Like I never got carded once, and I had my passport with me pretty much at all times. It never came up, which is interesting.
Did you ever see anything that looked like two kids standing on top of each other with a giant overcoat?
No, but dang, that would have been funny. I would have taken a picture of that. That would have been funny. But yeah, that's there is a bit of that feeling of nervousness, but you have to make sure that just repeat those things in your head. I'm gonna be okay. I can figure this out. I'm strong enough. I'm smart enough. I've got enough skills. I can do anything here. This is not that different from home. This is it's not that jarring. Everything. Look at it this way. The whole world basically operates under some similar principles. Everybody's just trying to do their job. Most people are trying to live their lives and trying to make themselves happy. And there are certain infrastructures. There's always places to get food. There's always places to go to the bathroom. There's always places to stay. That kind of thing. So if you start with the base mindset of just understanding the world basically operates.
It's not as foreign as it feels.
Yeah, it's not as foreign as it feels. It's not like you're going to an alien world where they, I don't know, eat through their shoulders. I don't know, whatever. But it's functionally the same. There are some things that just kind of have to exist. So if you take that and then you just build up from there.
Very interesting. Really good way to hold on to your. I think about anchor yourself, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
So. Did you have an itinerary? How strict was your itinerary?
Not very. And I knew I had some places I wanted to go. So I knew I was going to Milan, and I knew there wasn't anything I wanted to see in Milan. It was just a stopover for me to go to La Spezia and Cinque Terre, which is somewhere I knew I wanted to go.
So you weren't going to walk on the runway?
No, I was not. I mean, I'm not that fashionable. All I had with me was some polyester performance T-shirts and some jeans and shorts. I was not that stylish. Sorry, guys. I thought about it. I should have, full suit and tie, but
it's difficult to transport high fashion.
Indeed. And I figured if I was ever getting in that situation, I could just rent one. Yeah, I didn't expect to be at very many high gala parties. That's for sure.
Well, so. And I can't pronounce those villages.
Cinque Terre.
Cinque Terre.
Cinque Terre.
So that was your hard first place that you wanted to hit?
Correct. So And to explain what Cinque Terre is a group of 5 coastal villages that live right on the northwestern coast of Italy. Now, each village is just independent village itself, but they're all in one basic group. They're only a few miles apart. They're not very far apart from each other, but the shtick is that they could only be reached via on foot for a very long time. There was only hiking trails, and you can't drive in them, or you can drive to them, but you can't really drive around in them because they're too small, and the way they're built doesn't really work. And but now you can take ferries. You can take there's other trails that they made that make it a little bit easier, more touristy, more interesting. But for the most part, it's these incredibly beautiful and picturesque fishing villages. Essentially, it's what they are. Fishing and vineyard villages, which is what I found out later. I thought they were just fishing villages, but as it turns out, there are vineyards fucking everywhere. You know, for a country that's known for its wine, it's definitely they got a lot of wine. It's fast. The cliffside vineyards are what really fascinated me. How the fuck they got anything to grow on that? But they did.
So pretty sheer drops, or
I'm talking like that kind of incline.
Wow.
So I mean, and that was fascinating too, because I thought the first time I walked along the highway right on the coast on the cliffs, and they had like cliffside vineyards that I'm sorry if you guys can't see this on the camera, but
yeah.
it's super steep, like maybe like that. And I asked myself, how do they get down there? How do they actually work on these things? And then I come about another 100 yards or so, and I see this like trolley looking deal. And I'll post this on the pictures because I took a bunch of pictures of this because that was fascinating. They have they have a cart with a trolley and a little chair on it, and it sits on a rail. And so with that rail, it snakes all the way down through the vineyard.
Single rail, not double rail.
Yeah, single rail. So you can only go back and forth, but it snakes all the way through the vineyard. So all the person would have to do is get on that, drive down a little bit, get off, do their thing, hop back on, drive down some more. So they're not spending their entire time trying to attempt to climb up and down with a bunch of baskets of grapes on their shoulders.
It makes you wonder when they're like, we got to grow some grapes. I know, let's grow them right here.
Right. I mean, I imagine the reason they did that is not only water access, but also the sun, because the sun's
I suppose
hitting that pretty hard most of the day.
Yeah, I guess I don't know much about growing grapes, so that, yeah, but that would make sense.
They need lots of sunlight.
Good to know. Good to know. So you hit these villages.
Mm-hmm.
That was all on foot hiking, I assume.
Yes.
How many days were we talking here?
So most people, the first village is Rio Maggiore, and it goes all the way to Monte Rosa. Most people do the Rio Maggiore to Monte Rosa, or the inverse, Monte Rosa to Rio Maggiore. First and fifth and first, all the way through. I did not. I decided to make it a little bit harder on myself, and I started in the town of Porto Venere, which is before Rio Maggiore, so that's a little bit more southwest.
So you started outside the villages and hiked in.
Correct. Kind of, because technically Porto Venere it's not part of the villages, but it's decently close. It's like 10 miles away, 5 or 10 miles away or something like that. The way the guidebook, or the way a lot of the guides made it sound like, is that it's only like 5 or 6 kilometers, but I found that some of these trail markers are very liberal with their distance, because it tends to change. It'll say something like 200 meters. 500 like 500 meters, like 100 meters down the road. It's like, what are we doing here? So I started in Porto Venere, and I hiked all day. I hiked up 2 mountains that day, and because it's Porto Venere, 2 mountains, and then on the other side it's Rio Maggiore, and basically on the cusp of the third one. I got to the top of the second mountain about 6 or 7 o'clock. Got to a little town called Campiglia, which is in the very top of the mountains there, and it overlooks the Spezia and all that stuff. All that stuff's pretty close together. But so it's about 7 o'clock at night. I'm going through Campiglia, and I said, well, Rio Maggiore can't be that far away, so I'm just going to keep going. Now I start moving through the woods. It's about 7 or 8 o'clock. It starts to get dark. I had a flashlight with me, which I kind of thought maybe I was going to be hiking in the dark eventually. So that's a good travel tip. think about where you're going to be, think about what you might be doing, bring the appropriate tools. A flashlight is a really good idea. So I keep going through the woods. It's about maybe 9:30, and I'm just not getting anywhere near where I think I should be getting to. I mean, I'm going in the right direction, but I had no idea what the distance was going to be. So eventually I come out of the woods near a road, and I figured, well, if I just follow this road, I should be able to at least find a sign or something that tells me where I am. So go down the road about a quarter to half mile. This car comes up behind me, and there's this Italian guy sitting there. Now,
Italian guy in Italy, no way.
Yeah, that's wild, right? So I don't speak great Italian. I'm getting pretty good at it, but not fluent, or at least not conversationally fluent. And that guy didn't speak very good English, so we had a interesting language barrier. But able to figure out eventually that I was going to Rio Maggiore, and he offered to give me a ride. So he gives me a ride, and that was the first experience of being behind the wheel of an Italian driver, which is an adventure by itself. They'll fly going down 50, 60 miles an hour down these dirt roads or whatever, and slam on their brakes as they're getting to a corner. They'll flash their lights, and they'll whip around the corner and fly again. Now, it could just be, I thought maybe this is just a country road thing. No, they do this in town too. Same thing.
Practically power sliding around the corner.
Basically, and you have to remember that the most European streets now aren't very wide. They didn't build roads for cars like we have here. Yeah. So you have cars parked on both sides, and you only have maybe room for one, maybe two cars to fly through. So they're just flying through in these little, cute little Fiats. So, so that was fun. But I figured, you know what, this guy's probably been doing this for a very long time. I'm sure I will be fine. Anyway, so flying through this town called Pisa? God, I can't remember now. But it was not Rio Maggiore. The next town was not Rio Maggiore. So, like, crap. So we kept going, driving about 10.
Lied.
Right, basically. So, you drive through, probably driving 15 minutes. We go through a tunnel that's boring through this mountain and get to the other side of the tunnel. And he said, okay, I drop you off here. 20 to 30 minutes to Rio Maggiore on foot. I said, okay, cool. And then maybe it's like 10 o'clock at night now. Yeah. Slams his door, flies off. Okay, cool. Good luck. Start walking another, mile or so, and it's been about 20 to 25 minutes. And it's very clear that his version of 20 to 30 minutes and my version of 20 minutes are two different things. Mm-hmm. Because there was no town, like, at all. And it didn't seem like this highway was going to end. And so finally, after just a bout of exhaustion and just wanting to just say piss on it, I want to fall asleep for the night, I ended up seeing a hotel off the road. So I went to the hotel and I checked in, had a delicious glass of wine, and promptly passed out for the night. Luckily, the hotel was only €60, so it wasn't it wasn't like 100 or anything crazy like that. But that was there. So next morning, I get up and enjoy the view and all that, and after about noon or 1 o'clock, I get back on the road to figure out where I am, which is about another 2 miles or so away from Rio Maggiore. So I get back on the road, start walking down the coast, and that's where I saw that trolley. And eventually pop out near Rio Maggiore, and I walked down into the town. So I spent the day there. I got a hostel there. And
now, size-wise, like, how many, you keep calling these small villages, like, are they small in both geographic area and in population, or?
So the way that a lot of European towns are is they don't space their buildings out and their houses out like we do, like a lot of the times. So now a town could have a population, let's say 1,000, but there's a certain, in our heads, there's a certain square mile area there that we have, like our hometown, for example. Rio Maggiore is maybe half the size of our hometown, but probably has double the amount of people. So they're all like apartments and that kind of stuff stacked upon each other. All these buildings have zero space. They're all attached, basically. So it's a small geographic area, but can tend to have a decent sized population.
Okay, much more dense than we are.
Correct. And they tend to be in pockets too. Like they have houses that are split off from each other, but you'll see little pockets of 2 or 3, then like maybe 20 and then nothing, and then another 20 houses and nothing. It's kind of interesting. So I stayed there for the day, and then the evening. Next morning, I resumed my hike, and I went from Rio Maggiore to Manarola, the next village over, and from there I went to Cornelia. Now, right before I got to Cornelia, it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It started pouring rain. So fantastic, right? So I had to stop. I was almost, maybe 20 minutes away from being down into town, but unfortunately, I didn't want to get everything wet, so I wanted to wait. So I waited under this like rock / tree, and everything's soaking wet around the 2 meter like area that I have. And then, but I waited for a good 20 minutes, and it just wasn't letting up. And I thought, well, I can't just sit up here till dark, so I'm just gonna brave it. And I just booked ass down that mountain, and very carefully, because I could easily slip and crack my head open on the rocks. But I mean, you guys, and when I'm talking about these trails down these mountains, it's not like they are just like pretty little dirt trails and everything's really easy to walk on. No.
Handicap assist railings.
Exactly. Understand that this is a mountainous trail. Understand this can be high up in the air. That there's rocks. There's sometimes there's only this much amount of walking space, and then cliff, and 100 feet down. So I mean, there are times where I could, if I made one or two wrong steps, I've been done for. So, maybe not even seriously injured, but I certainly would have been screwed, because I mean, nobody would have came. Who's going to be able to come help me, right? So, you gotta be careful. At least be smart about it. Now they're generally safe. They're pretty as long as you're not a complete fool about it, you're fine. But you still have to exercise some caution. So I get into Cornelia about 5 or 6 o'clock, and it's getting dark. I gotta find somewhere to stay for the night, because the rain's just not letting up. And I brought my sleeping bag, and I planned to do some camping on this hiking, and it just wasn't happening. So I finally decided I'm going to train back to La Spezia after no hostels were really available at the time. Now in this town, there's just small villages, so if there is a hostel, it's full. There's just not enough time, and by the time I'd gotten there, figuring where everything was, I didn't have enough time, and the hostel that was in Cornelia was already full. And there was one over in Manarola, but they got kind of bad reviews, and by the time I would have gotten there, I would have not been able to check in, because some hostels cut off their check-in times at like 7 o'clock. So I decided to go back to La Spezia and take my chances on any hostels there. So I did, and luckily I took the train back to La Spezia. Okay. Yeah. So luckily I had a good hostel there. It was really nice. I was able to check in there for the night and get some rest. And the next day I took the train just back to the last village of Monterosa, because I
resume from last checkpoint.
Right, something like that. But then I thought, well, I could either keep hiking from where I was in Cornelia, or I could just go to the last village of Monterosa by train, because I'm running out of time. I'd only allotted a few days, like 4 or 5 days towards this part of the chunk, and I still have so much more Italy to see.
Yeah, I mean, your return trip was already booked, so...
Exactly. So it's not like I had that much leeway. But again, I tried to give myself some leeway to be, if I wanted to stay in one place another day or two, I could. But since I had so many more places to go and see, I figured, okay, why don't I just go enjoy the beaches for the day and just go explore Monterosa and be done. So I did, enjoyed the beaches, enjoyed some pasta, some wine. It was a great day. So that was my hiking trip in La Spezia, or Chicoterri, and then back to La Spezia.
Yeah, so then from there, we still on some kind of itinerary, or have we graduated to winging it?
Both.
So
I thought initially that maybe I could hike from La Spezia to Pisa, which is a day or two.
That place with the tower.
The place with the tower. Which would have been about a day or two worth of hike. But then I thought, well, again, time.
Walk more or see more?
Walk more or see more, right? Yeah. So I figured I could hike later on in Tuscany. So I did. So I decided, all right, I'm just going to take the train over to Pisa, and then just maybe stay over there overnight, and then head over to Florence the next morning. So I went to Pisa. I trained over to Pisa, got into a hostel which was very close to the tower itself. Hung out there all day, saw the tower and the cathedral that's next to it. Now, I'd always assumed or thought that based on pictures I ever saw about the Leaning Tower, that it was somewhere out in the country, right? Because it doesn't look like there's much around it whenever you see
pictures. Yeah, you always just see it in kind of an open space.
Right, but it's not. It's right in the smack in the middle of town. You'll have,
cool.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. there's just town surrounding it, and then patch of grass, and then those two buildings, and that's it. Yeah, so, but it was still cool to see, and it was cool to walk around and watch it, like 1,000 tourists doing this. Yeah, it's funny, but it was fun. Then that night, I was at the hostel, and well, I made a bunch of friends, a bunch of Europeans, and we went out drinking, had a really pretty wild time, and I was the last man standing.
Excellent. Do us proud.
Mm.
So what's a night drinking cost in Pisa versus if we hit up Keegan's tonight?
Player, trust me, the amount of money I spent versus let's put it this way: the amount of money I'd spent getting drunk in Pisa versus the amount of money I was spending at Keegan's is, I mean, night and day. I spent about 2 bottles of wine when we were grilling and hanging out, so €6. Okay. And total, not a piece. And then I spent €20 when we were out at the bars. Maybe 15 or 20.
That's crazy,
Yeah,
dude.
and I just got silly drunk.
Man.
Now, that being said, we had some, the other guys had some beers at the hostel, and so we had some of those, and we were walking around, each of us had a 40 Heineken, so we had one of those too. But that, again, that's cheap too.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna hit the bars in Minneapolis, even in we live in Northeast, and that's where we're the cheaper part of town, and we can hit triple digits easy.
Yeah, I mean, a good night in a big city, and especially in America, like in Minneapolis especially, that you're looking at triple digit night. Whereas Europe, or at least Italy, at least in Pisa, nothing. And Pisa's a pretty decent sized town, and we were in and where we went was so in a lot of places in especially in Italy, there's places called piazzas, which are basically town squares. And what they're a big square part where it's a big open area, people can kind of hang out and congregate and put up like markets and that kind of stands and that kind of stuff. But this particular area was by a college. This particular piazza was by a college, and there was a lot of bars around it. So I mean, you're like in a square surrounded by bars, and
the humanity.
Oh yeah, hundreds of people in there just having a great time. So it was a fun atmosphere, and yeah, it was basically like being in a big college town, or like being back in like Fargo, for example, except it was like in a square. So you'd think you'd spend a lot more money, but you really didn't. I mean, I bought shots, I bought drinks, and nothing. It was honestly, like I had a really great night for under €30.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's nuts, man.
So in Pisa, anything else of note?
Well, again, Pisa's two things. Pisa's the Leaning Tower and the cathedral and a college town. That's pretty much it. It's fun. I had a lot of fun at the hostel, and I met some really great people. And the next day, two of those folks asked me what I was doing later on, and I said, well, I'm going to Florence. And that's my plan. And they said, hey, you want to come with us? This guy and gal, both British. The only guy was from South Africa, but then I think he lived in the UK for a little bit. So anyway, they asked me to come with. I said, sure, absolutely, why not? Let's rock and roll. Cool. So I tagged along with them, and for the next few days we took the train the next day from Pisa to Florence. And Florence is I know I haven't been to every city in the world, so I can't say this, but Florence is one of the most beautiful cities I've ever been to in the world. It's like walking around a fairy tale. It truly is. I cannot stress that enough. I've said this a lot now to a lot of people, but it's the only way I can describe it. It's like it being in a fairy tale.
Is it just is it like the architecture, the what's the real like linchpin there?
So, got into Florence, we find a hostel, great hostel, start walking around. We walk towards the Basilica di Santa Maria. There's a couple other names that I'm forgetting, but it's where the main Duomo is. It's where really the city center really starts, and you see this building, and it just blows your socks off. Like, I mean, you cannot fathom the magnificence of it, how epic it is. And epic in the real true sense of the word, not how like we throw that word around these days, but like in the real true meaning of that word is truly epic. You can't like you're thinking to yourself, how did people build this? And actually, I read it later. It took about 100 years to build, off and on, because there was a lot of stuff that happened with it. But it fully got finished. It took 100 years to finish.
Miracles of feudalism.
Yeah, you know that politics, right?
Yeah,
very much. So it was incredible. I mean, and this stuff was everywhere. Like these kind of buildings were everywhere. You know, obviously that was the biggest one. But you see cathedrals, you'll see these massive achievements of architecture. You'll see statues. You'll see pieces of art. It's fucking everywhere, and you can't like spit without hitting something like beautiful. It's crazy. It's absolutely bizarre. So
people get mad all the spitting you were doing.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's just all over the place, and the vibe of people. Everybody's just in a good mood. Everybody's having a great time. There are artists. There's music everywhere, especially at night, because that's when most of the tourists are not out messing around, and that's just basically locals, and just being around all the artists and being around because there's live music everywhere, and it just creates this lovely and artistic vibe. And it's so much fun to be around. Everybody's in such a good mood. Everybody's just having a good time, and why not, right? In that place, how could you not? It's incredible. It's one of those things where you'll watch like a fairy tale movie or whatever, and you'll see these buildings in these fairy tale movies and think, God, that can't exist anywhere in the real world, but it does, because those things
you
are
go to
based
Florence
off,
and find it,
right? Because that shit's based off shit in the real world, and you can't believe it. Like you can't like this is something I'm standing here, I'm like pinching myself because I can't believe this exists. I can't believe this is a real life thing I can see and touch and feel.
So, did you meet any nerds while you were out?
I meet any nerds? Well, the people, people I was hanging out with were nerds. Just kind of gamers, and people were kind of history nerds. So the one gal was a huge history nerd. We got along really well because that was one of the things we hit it off on, just talking about history, talking about all the things that we were seeing. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of nerdy people around. I walked around in some game stores and things like that, just trying to meet, because that was one of the things I wanted to do, was try to see what do the nerds do here, right? But that was a conversation you and I were having the other day about. I mean, nerds really aren't that different in any part of the world, and basically because of the internet. We all do basically the same things. We all create the internet, and the internet is across geographical culture. Right.
Yeah.
So there's gamers all over the place. There's and they're all basically doing the same things. They're all thinking the same things because they're all on the internet. Now, obviously, there is nuance, and there's obviously geographical cultural difference, but gamers are pretty similar. And it was really fun to see how that crossed borders like that. And though the board games and that kind of stuff was different, you still saw the magic. You still saw Pokemon. You still saw, like there were, for example, I recall coffee shops and restaurants having, written on their chalkboards or whatever, Pokestop.
So Pokemon Go seems still pretty active over there?
It seemed like it was, or at least enough to the point where businesses were advertising.
That's cool. So did you end up, you met a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Did you end up making any friends you decided to keep in touch with, or are they all just kind of travel buddies?
So the two folks I was with in Florence that I'm going to keep in touch with, we'd spent enough time. We spent 3 days total, 2 nights total in Florence together, and then they went off the next day, and I stayed in Florence one more day. And then we ended up meeting up in Rome eventually for a night and having supper and that kind of stuff. So we ended up making more like regular friends as opposed to just like travel acquaintances or that kind of thing. So those two, I mean, they're really they're incredible people, really nice, really they have a great story. They both met each other while traveling on the road. I think it was in South America. I forget exactly which country they met in, but they met in separate travel groups and then became friends and decided to travel the world together. Fascinating.
Adorable.
Yeah, but they're not a couple.
Yeah.
They're very clear on that, because that's what everybody assumes, is they're a couple, and they're not. They're more like it. But the more you get to know them, they're more like brother and sister.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, they're kind of hilarious just to watch them interact with each other. It's fun. They're really great. I miss those guys. Those guys are fun to talk to.
That's awesome. So, what was next then? You had Florence, then
Firenze, as they call
Firenze.
it. Firenze. I got into an interesting conversation with a guy, on an Italian guy on that. I was on a train going from Rome to Venice, and I was talking to a guy who was from Florence. It was in like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Maybe I just didn't hear right, but it sounded like because he asked me where I was from, and I said where I was from, and I asked him where he was from. He said Firenze, but it sounded like he said France.
Yep.
And then he said something else, like where he was going. I thought, but didn't you just say you were from France? I said, no. He said, no, Firenze. And you keep hearing France for some reason.
Yep.
And I said, Florence? He said, oh, Florence, no, Firenze. And then they talked to another Italian guy, and then what I got out of that conversation is that all these Americans think Florence is Firenze is Florence, because that's the American or slash British slash French pronunciation of Firenze is Florence. So kind of makes you wonder what other countries, how they pronounce our cities.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, what they call our cities.
One of the most hilarious things I had seen on the news, I love to watch different world news, and I was watching Al Jazeera one night, and I happened to notice in the background of this interview, because I was kind of in the kitchen, just screwing around, had it on for background noise, and I just peeked up the screen, and I was like, hey, wait a minute, that's the Stone Arch Bridge here in Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. So I turned it up, and I step in, and I sit down, and they were talking about the ongoing civil war in Somalia, mm-hmm. and they were talking to a representative of the Somali community here in Minneapolis, and I really wish I had recorded this because I can't duplicate this gal's accent, but the newsroom was in Doha, Qatar, and the way, and the anchor was from Doha as well, and the way that she said Minneapolis, I just died laughing. I mean, she really tried, but you could see all of a sudden because she's using a teleprompter, and all of a sudden you just kind of see her get this look on her face like
Minneapolis. Something like that.
Something like that.
The funny thing about that though is that now, correct me if I'm wrong, Riveters, but you know what the word Minneapolis means?
I thought it was City Lakes or something like that.
Something like that, because the word polis is Greek for city,
yep.
And the word mini is Native American. I forget which tribe. I apologize, and so I'm not going to say it to try to not butcher that. But it means water / river / lakes.
Wolfpaw let you have it if you translate it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So, city of lakes or city of water or water city, if you want to flip those two around, which is of course an interesting mix of two very different cultures. So I wonder to myself if other countries would even try to change it or just leave it the way it is, right?
Yeah. Well, and they may, it's at least in Europe and in the Middle East, they would, Greek things are familiar to them. The Greeks were a pretty big deal back in the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, the languages of our Native Americans are probably pretty foreign by their standards.
Right.
We're here in Minnesota. We of course have a lot of influences from the Native Americans, and specifically in naming, and yeah, that's probably not as far-reaching.
The thing, it's funny. Minnesota, as I got made fun of a couple of different times. They know more about us, like specifically Minnesota, than I thought. Than I was expecting.
That's good. I always hate it when we're referred to as flyover country.
Right, but the funny thing is about that is that I never once got got identified as an American. I always got mistaken as somebody from the UK because I was speaking English, but they couldn't pick the accent out.
Our accent's flat enough where they're just...
I guess, I don't know, but not once they ever guessed I was an American. I was from the UK first.
Huh. Wonder if that's good. Makes you wonder what kind of American tourists they're used to interacting with, like East Coast accents, maybe Southern.
Right.
I suppose some of the East Coast accents are much more pronounced, and then of course the Southern accent, that's got to be pretty.
Right, pretty heavy. Now,
yeah.
The folks from the UK that I met, of course, they knew exactly where I was from. Not only because they could tell, but because they both, or at least I know one had been to America.
Yeah.
So she knew.
Well, they knew for certain you weren't British.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty obvious I wasn't British in any way. Or from the UK or from South America, Australia, or any other somewhat British accenty country.
Yeah.
But pretty much anyway, like Germans, French, Italians, they always thought I was from there, which is kind of bizarre. I honestly thought that was kind of bizarre, but
Yeah. That I would find that surprising as well.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, to answer your question, so in Florence, I went to the town of Siena. Now, I decided to hike this one because I figured it was very far, and I wanted to see the Tuscan countryside, so I started hiking. So I started early in the day, 11 or noon or whatever, out of Florence, and I went south. So Siena is south, right in the heart of Tuscan countryside. Walked all day, climbed a good mountain, ended up in a mountain village called San Casciamo. It was 7 or 8 o'clock at night. I just missed the sunset, which I wanted to see over the mountain, but didn't quite catch it. Hung out there, had a glass of wine in a very authentic home-style Italian restaurant, and I say that because they do kind of like a dinner service, so you have your plates, right?
Now, are they cheesy like us, and you actually use those words to describe their own restaurant, or
No.
This is you embellishing.
This is me describing it in a way that people would understand.
Okay.
Because they didn't say it like this. It's just Italian restaurant or ristorante is what they call them. But I'm explaining it that way because they had an appetizer, first plate, second plate, and then dessert, kind of like full service like that. That's how the service runs. So that was cool. And then I said, well, it's late at night. I'm not at Siena. Maybe I don't know. I think I was maybe a third of the way there. Because when I embarked on this journey, I knew it was going to take me a couple of days, and I didn't just assume it was going to take me a day. So I got to find a place to sleep. There are no hostels here. Everything's closed. I'm just going to find a place to sleep under a tree or whatever, right? So I found a park, and the park isn't very good. It was really wide open, no trees or any good cover like that. But the park was on top of a parking garage, and so I walked around there for a little bit and tried to find maybe I could sleep under a staircase or something, because I had a sleeping bag with me and all that stuff. So at least I figured I'd get a few hours of sleep under some cover. So in parking garages where you'll typically find like a corner away from some parking spots, and they'll have like a bunch of pallets and that kind of stuff stacked up.
Yep.
So I found a spot like that, had a bunch of pallets up. So I said, cool, I can make a little fort. So I did.
Fort Berge.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you raise a flag and try to claim it?
I should have if I had a flag with me. And so I laid down.
So unprepared.
I know, right? Next time. Flag with my face on it.
That's exactly what his ego needs.
Flag. So I laid back, threw a sleeping bag down, laid down for the night. It was 9 or 10 o'clock, so I was there till 5:30. And by laid down for the night, I waited. I don't sleep, I wait.
Yeah. Berge doesn't sleep, he waits.
I wait. So I just clicked wait 7 hours on my weight meter, and hung out there for the night. And about 5:36, I got back up. Now I was still exhausted. I'd been walking the entire previous day, and I think I pulled a muscle in my thigh when I was climbing because I was kind of limping at that point, and it felt really funny. So I thought, and I kind of thought I only have maybe a week left, maybe a week and a couple days left, and then 9 days left in country. Not even that, because I had to take a couple days to even try to get back to Zurich because I was flying out on that Friday. So I thought, maybe if I just take a bus to Siena, I'll get, again, view versus walk sort of thing.
Yep.
So I'll take a bus to Siena, I'll find a place to stay, sleep for a couple of hours, and I'll be good to go. So where I was, I couldn't get Wi-Fi, couldn't find the restaurant where I was at to even get Wi-Fi outside the door, so I was kind of double screwed there. And there wasn't any bus schedules laying around or anything like that, so I figured, I'm just going to wait here until the buses come, because I knew where they were going to be, and maybe one will say Siena.
Or if we're lucky.
If I'm lucky, right? So buses came through, a couple buses came through, nothing was showing Siena, and one of the buses stopped and then parked, so I went and asked the driver, I said, heck, and he didn't speak English, but I said, Siena? He's, no. And then he basically, and what he could say was, no buses here coming from Siena today. We're going to Siena today. But I could go to another town. I could take a bus to go to another town, and then it would link up to go to Siena. Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay, so let's do that. So I jumped on the next bus, which was a bus to Poggibonsi, so I think that's how it's pronounced. And then that bus was free. Now, the only reason I could think of that could have been free is because I also saw a bunch of kids hanging out there, and they were getting on the buses at the same time. So I think those are the buses they take to go to school, and the other the bigger villages, the bigger towns.
So you rode the school bus.
So I rode the school bus essentially, and yeah, but it was it looked like a regular regional bus. So I'm guessing that's how they get around. I didn't ever see anything that was specifically a school bus, like an orange or yellow bus like we're used to here. But there was also adults on there too, so it must be like the business / school bus or whatever. So so they just seem to go around and around and around. Cool. So I got that. Get to Paggi Bandi, get off the bus, and wait for a bus to Siena. Now, they didn't see a couple buses passed. I didn't see any, so I went and asked somebody again. Hey, is this going to Siena? He said the next bus, that one is going to Siena, but it wasn't labeled Siena. So one thing I've been finding out during the travel was that sometimes, even though the specific bus or train isn't technically labeled for that destination, it's still a stop for it. It's just not labeled on the front.
And if you were local and familiar with the area, you might have known that. But...
Right. So sometimes just ask. Just ask somebody. So I did. Got on that bus, and it luckily brought me to Siena. And so I did the first thing I always do in every town: find a coffee shop, find some Wi-Fi, sit down, have a cup of coffee, and figure out where I am. So I found a little shop called it's called Charlie Shop. This little bald dude named Charlie. And it had to be the bartender had to be that guy, because you look at his head, and then he's got a little embroidery like logo of himself on his polo, and it looks the exact same. Like you look, must be Charlie. There's Charlie Bar, not Charlie Shop. Anyway,
way to go, Charlie.
Good job, Chuck. So, so then I figured out where I was, figured out where the hostel was, and I made way. That was across town, so I walked another half hour and got to that. Now, I'm going in a little bit in detail because of how ridiculous this was.
Yeah.
So I get to this hostel, and I get to the building, and there's two signs that say that point to reception, except they point in different directions, which is confusing. So I'm just kind of standing there. I'm exhausted. I haven't really slept. I'm just like looking at, and then out of the corner of my eye, I see a door open, and two guys pop out like Three Stooges style, like poke their heads out from the sides of the door. One of them was wearing sunglasses, and they had this weird shit-eating grit on their face. Reception, check in. Okay. So I walk in and get checked in. And he's just, like, one of the guys, one of the managers there. He's just bizarre dude, but he's kind of an interesting character. Named Pierre, was his name.
Of course.
Yeah, and I got checked in, and I went and passed out for a few hours. But it was great. That was a good one. So Siena itself, beautiful town. Ah, goddamn. It's my telephone.
Hi, you've reached Bergie.
I don't know that number, so whatever. I'll just start from Siena. Okay, so Siena itself, beautiful town, a lot of fun. It's right in the heart of Tuscany. It's got a lot of old architecture. It used to be a lot of it used to be an old fort, which Florence conquered back in the 1500s. It's still when most of Italy was still kind of city-states. They kind of took that over. There's been a lot of fun with that. Read Italian history post like from the 1200s to like the 1600s. There's a lot of like back and forth that
One
happened
city conquering the other.
Yeah, basically. It was really fun, really fascinating town. I got to they let me take a bike. The hostel let me take a bike and ride around all day, so I did. It's great. It was a really great way to check out a Italian city.
Didn't get run over by any crazy drivers?
No, I was very careful about that. Goofy fuckers. God, man.
Always looking at the walls for flashing lights.
Pretty much. Well, and here's the other thing too, is that sidewalks. Yep. Okay, now here they're 3 or 4 feet wide, right?
Yo.
There, sometimes, and then this. And then this, and then this sometimes, and then nothing, and then just this, and wall and road where the cars were. So there were times where like I couldn't even sidestep because I had a pack on, so I just kind of had to like thin myself up like half my size in order to not get hit by something. And they don't care. They have no fucks. They're just gonna drive on the road. And then if they hit you, they hit you. If they don't, they don't. And that's it.
Did you see anybody get hit?
No, like I was like, you have no idea how surprised I was that there were no bodies, like, all over the street.
just littered with dead pedestrians.
Right, like, I just didn't get it, man. But somehow it works. So, that was interesting. But, yeah, I watched out for that all day. But, I mean, the other thing is, too, is that the drivers kind of know where they can and can't do that. Like, if they're in crowds of people, they don't just fly through until they get a gap, then they'll fly. But then they'll slam on the brakes again. But it's fascinating. Plus, you just know better. Just get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I spent some time in New York, and I always found it was interesting how they didn't really care what the pedestrian lights said.
Mm-hmm.
You know, seemed to have the philosophy of you can't kill us all, and then just cross the street.
We'll, 3 or 4 of us will stop your car. And then, since there's 20, we'll be fine.
You know, and I'm sitting there all polite Minnesotan, like standing at the crosswalk waiting for the light to change, and then all of a sudden, like 15 people just right past me. I was like, oh, so we're doing that, I guess.
Right, yeah. There was a point where I just kind of said, piss on it, I'm just going to go with this crowd, because they seem to not really give a shit, and they seem to be fine, so whatever.
Fun.
Yeah. Fascinating.
So, what else have you been seeing?
I biked all day, enjoyed some ice cream. I fought a gorilla, the usual.
Like ice cream or gelato?
Ice cream in this very specific case. I mean, there's gelateria is what they call them in some places, gelato, that kind of stuff. There's ice cream all over. In the touristy areas, there's ice cream all over the place. Once you get outside the touristy areas, there's not really much like that kind of stuff.
Not as actually huge as we think it is over here.
Right. But when you're in the touristy areas, it's like every other fucking shop. There's ice cream goddamn everywhere.
Nice.
So, but yes, did that. A lot of sightseeing, a lot of pictures, a lot of cool little cathedrals. Explored their old town, explored their fortress, which is all open to the public, right? So, on this fortress, like I'm there, like maybe 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. So like I'm seeing joggers running on the fortress wall. I'm just thinking, so this is your life. You just
your everyday.
Yeah, it's your everyday. I'm just gonna go for a jog on this fortress wall. It's cool, whatever.
Yeah. We're clearly living in the wrong place.
Yeah, right. Jeez, I thought that was nuts. But it was cool. It was really fun. See, it was a nice town. So.
Sweet. Where to now, man? We've been to Pisa, Siena, some villages.
Florence.
Yeah.
Off to Rome.
Off to Roma. Now, Bergie has been into Rome since we were but wee lads.
Mm-hmm.
So this had to have been huge for you.
It was. So I took the train from Siena to Rome. I took an early train because it says a set like 4 or 5 hour train ride. So it was a long time. So I get there about 7 o'clock at night in Rome. So it just turned nighttime. You pull into the train station. It just seems like in every other city. It was the first city I really saw a glass building in, which was like a real more modern looking building, which I thought was interesting. It was a Radisson.
Of course it was a Radisson. Did it seem to fit well with the rest of the city, or was it just like sticking out like a sore thumb? Like, here's this historic, beautiful city that's been around for 1,000 years or so, and then here's the fucking Radisson.
Right. So it blended, I thought, but next to the train station, because the train station's huge, it all kind of made, like everything, all that stuff together kind of made sense. And a lot of the buildings are a little bit newer, but then they have, like, Italy has a very good and interesting way of blending the modern and the old. You'll walk into a store and it looks really old and stony on the outside, but on the inside it's like state of the art. The doors are glass doors and they open to the side and that kind of thing. So it's really, they have a really good ability to blend that. So by the time by the time I got to Rome, I'd seen so much of that kind of stuff that I was already used to it. That being said, obviously anytime you hit ruins or anything like a monument or anything, that stuff stands out apart from the rest of the city. For several different reasons. So I get to Rome. I meet up with my 2 friends who happen to also be at Rome there, and had supper. Had the best pasta I ever had in Rome. All of Italy. Best pasta was in Rome. Really, really rock and roll pasta. Go out the next morning and go start exploring. Hit the Colosseum, obviously.
Yeah, we were just upstairs, random backgrounds on the Chromecast. Picture of the Colosseum comes up. Bergie was like, was in that exact spot.
Yeah, I've been there. It was cool. And the Colosseum is magnificent. I mean, again, another epic structure. Like I mean, imagine being inside something like that. It's 2,000 years old, and it's fascinating. It's honestly, it's so fascinating just to walk around there. You just have this incredible feeling, and you're just imagining what it was like to see gladiators and ships fight each other and animals, and like the list goes on and on, and all the crazy things that happen to us. Imagining being a spectator there and being part of that it was really cool. And then you think, like, you know what the funny thing about that though is, this thought actually just occurred to me today. It's like, you know, they had built this magnificent structure, right? This like really a feat of engineering prowess in that time, in that era, and they built it for fucking fun.
Yep.
This is a place of entertainment.
Well, yeah, and that's a really, that kind of shows at least somewhat the advancement of human society, that we can exert that amount. You know, it's beyond survival now; it's to entertainment.
Right.
Like that's cool. I think
it is. It's absolutely impressive. So then there's that. There was the Constantine Arches right next to it. There was the Great Forum, Palatine Hill, the Circus Maximus, which you can just walk on. And it's just, you know, at that point it's a patch of dirt, but you could tell it used to be a chariot racing arena. You know, that's just cool. So I walked around all that good stuff. I spent, I mean, over the next 2 days, I went to the Vatican. I went to the Trevi Fountains. I went to the Spanish Steps. You know, I mean, fought evil, that kind of thing. You know,
yeah.
And
did you get to borrow the Pope's hat?
I did, and I didn't light it on fire.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. But
I feel like they wouldn't appreciate that.
Right, but then I made fun of him when he punched me in the face and took the hat back.
Yeah. Well, that will happen.
Yeah,
you don't talk smack to Pope Francis.
No, you know, he's quick, man. He's spry.
Spry for an old guy.
Yeah, he is, really. Pilates, calisthenics, I don't know, man, but cool. So anyway, I had a great time. I did not go into the Vatican. I just hung out in the square for like an hour because the lines were just atrocious, and their security is like airport security, so I mean the lines were just way back, and it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I said, the hell with it. So, next time. But it was so cool just sitting in the square. It's such a magnificent area, and there's just statues. I think they're all the popes anyway. I'm just of all of them, and all that white marble was so cool and so pretty to look at in the sun. I filled up my water bottle at the Vatican, so there's fountains all over the place, and I'm just filling it up. And all I'm thinking to myself right now is this: so if I'm filling up water at the Vatican, is this holy water? Yeah. Is that what this is? Okay, still good. Yeah. And it was cold, which I thought that was really interesting. But as every other water I've gone on, most fountains it's like semi warm, but this is like super cold. That was interesting. So anyway, I left the Vatican. I walked around Garibaldi Square. Giuseppe Garibaldi is one of he's kind of like the Italian George Washington. Like, he's a super prominent figure in the founding of the now country, the Republic of Italy. So really important dude. They have a big statue and square devoted to him and all of his generals and people during his time. Really, in that area is where you can overlook all of Rome. Yeah, it's just this absolutely stunning view of all of Rome. Now, here's the funny thing about Rome, and here's what I didn't really get. So one of our former boss went there just earlier this year.
Yep.
Him and his wife.
So that's postcards.
Right, sends postcards. And he told me, because I had lunch with him right before I left, and he told me, like, oh yeah, you could walk across Rome in a half hour to an hour. I said, you're full of shit.
Yeah,
way. No way. But you can. You could, if you speed walked, you could do it in an hour. Like, I think you could like casually walk in a straight line across Rome in about 2 hours. Which tells me it's not that big. It's not as big as you would think it is. It's really not. That kind of blew my mind. But then, you think about European cities, again, it's all stacked on top of each other. It's all dense. It's so condensed. So, that was kind of fascinating thing. But you think Rome is just this massive. It's big, but it's not as big as you think. You can get across it and casually in a couple of hours. Wow. Walking in a straight line. Hard to walk in a straight line with all the streets are, but if you were. I mean, I walked from the train station to the Colosseum to the Vatican in a couple of, of the time I spent walking was maybe an hour and a half. the time I spent traveling to each of those
That's
ends.
crazy.
And I took a really roundabout way to get there. Because like from the end of the Tiber River where the Circus Maximus is to the Vatican was 45 minutes, and then from my hostel to the Coliseum was 25, and about that amount of time to the Tiber was another 10 or 15. So maybe an hour and a half.
Jeez.
And then the Vatican
insane.
the Vatican is 2/3 of the way through town. The Vatican City is 2/3 of the way, roughly, and the train station itself is just on the other side. Is on the other side of town. All completely on the other. So like, I mean, you're talking like I'm walking 2/3 of the distance through town in an hour and a half, roundabout way.
That is very crazy.
Yeah, like you think it would be bigger, but it's not. It was not that big. But it's still, I mean, it's littered with fascinating stuff. I mean, statues and artwork everywhere. And you can't spit without hitting a cathedral, church of some kind, right? But it's cool, man. The artwork is mind blowing. It's just like walking into one cathedral is just, the artwork is mind blowing. I walked into the one basilica that was Michelangelo's last work, and that's just so cool to see. So Rome was incredible. I really loved it. I still like Florence more. I think Florence was just more my jam. But I loved Rome.
Would you say that's your favorite city out of the trip was Florence?
Absolutely, without question. I don't know if it was just because of the artist in me. I don't know, but I loved Florence. Absolutely loved it. Rome was definitely a close second. But I think the one of the reasons I didn't like Rome was because it was because it was more business. There was more of they definitely had it's a capital, so it had more of a business feel. There's more capital stuff going on. They had the state stuff going on. It's also super touristy, so that doesn't help. But I mean, overall, it's still a very fun place to be.
How many when in Rome jokes did you make?
A couple. There was a couple. The first one was not made by me. It was made by. I'm purposely not saying their names. So guys, I'm not trying to be insulting. Just I don't know if you want me to be naming you here, but if you watch this, but the gal, she made the first one. It's just like, oh, I see what you did there. I can't remember what the hell we said right before, but then she said, "Oh well, in Rome." Sips a glass of wine, like, for fuck.
Well, at least you weren't the first one.
Yeah, at least, I think I made one after that.
That's one of those not it moments.
Yeah, right. But it's like you can't help yourself. It's kind of one of those you kind of have to.
Yeah.
But I think one of the other reasons I think I like Florence more than Rome is Florence is cleaner. Florence is a super fucking clean city. Rome is not in places, but Rome's more like just like a regular city, like as dirty as like being in downtown Minneapolis or downtown St. Paul, whatever. Yeah. Pick X city, right?
The downtown of a biggest city in the country,
right? It's gonna be
capital.
Yeah.
There's stuff going on, they can't stop it for you.
Yeah, no matter what. I mean, no matter how diligent they are with street sweeping and taking care. And there were places where you'd be out in front of a shop and like the shop owner would be sweeping in front of them. Like, oh, that's cool. I always appreciate seeing something like that, but it's not as many places as you'd like to see. But anyway, I left Rome at night, and I went to Venice the next morning.
That's the city I'm dying to see. I love the idea of waterways as streets.
Yeah, it's so that shit by itself is fascinating. Like, just so I walked around Venice for the most of the day because Venice was Thursday and I had to leave the next day. I had to get to Zurich, be on the flight the next day. So I only had so much time there, but just being there and just enjoying that, it was utterly fascinating. Just walking around, like, streets would randomly end because there's just water and that's it. So you have to turn around, go find a bridge and get over, and then hope that doesn't just go to a random dead end. So I mean, and then you can't drive a car in Venice. You can only drive up to Venice, and then cross the bridge, and then you just boats. And that's it. You're screwed. Like, that's it.
There are no roads.
Yeah, there are no roads. There are small, and I'm talking like some of the streets were like this far apart. So I'm like squeezing my way through practically. That was kind of wild. But these are just houses, or these are just apartments, or whatever. And then you'd go down one of these, and then you'd hit a dead end of like three of the houses all stuck together. So it's shit, and you go back around. And I only I think I maybe scratched a fourth of Venice before I had to go. So I mean, there's so much more to see, and it's one big fucking maze, and it's kind of bizarre. It's kind of cool. Yeah, but it was a blast. I mean, it was absolutely so much fun walking around there, just enjoying that fact. Now, the next time I go, I will probably take a boat until I take one of those gondolas just to say I did, but they're so expensive. Like I said, fuck that.
Well, and if it was easy enough to walk around, I mean, just and I've seen a couple of your pictures, and it's just like I'm sitting there like I want to actually be there, and just I've always loved nautical things. Minnesota, we're full of lakes, land of way more than 10,000 lakes.
Right.
And I grew up on a lake, and so like water is fun to me, but that's a completely different kind of.
It's a different world.
Yeah.
It's like imagine that except it's like Superior.
Yeah.
Right? It's crazy.
Did you get to see? I know I've seen some pictures on TV. Did you get to see like the bladders they float the buildings on? And...
Not really. I think if I would have went further in, I probably would have. But I was only like would have been the northwest side of it, so I didn't go very far in. I just honestly didn't have enough time. I wish I had a couple of days, because I think it would have been more interesting to explore stuff. And the other thing I thought was kind of funny was that there just didn't seem to be that many people walking around either. Like it was kind of dead for the most part. Like once you get inside this, there were people, but it wasn't nearly as like crowded as I thought it was. Until then, when I got back on the other side, it was 2:00 in the afternoon. And then it started to get a little more full, and there was certainly a lot of people by the train station and the ferries and all that stuff. But like if you get really into the town, there just wasn't that many people walking around.
Well, now that time of year, is that their usual tourist season, or were you pretty out of season?
I was honest. I've been honest. So like, it's up to September. It's like April to September is tourist season typically. That's when it's the warmest. So I was there in October. So I was off season.
And did you find yourself missing crowds, or were you kind of happy with not being?
Kind of happy with it. It was just kind of nice to walk around some like really old, super cool city streets and just peace and quiet. It was cool. That was kind of a blast.
Good to know.
Cool, man. Yeah, then after Venice, I went to Milan and back to Zurich. And I stayed overnight in Zurich and got on the plane the next morning, and there you are.
But now, where did you stay overnight in Zurich?
So that's where shit gets interesting.
Yes.
So, on my way back to Milan, there's an announcement on the train. Mostly in Italian. I can't really understand what the hell they were saying, so I had to ask the guy who was in front of me, like, what the fuck's going on? He said, well, there's a problem at the train station in Milan, so there's a delay. I said, okay. How much of a delay? 20-25 minutes. I said, well, shit, because the train to Zurich was only 20-25 minutes of layover, essentially, so it left immediately after. So there was a chance I was going to miss my train. I said, shit, well, hopefully this delay's not very long. And then the train started going again, like... And then I thought, well, if that's just train was delayed, maybe the train to Zurich was going to be delayed, so it would be alright. But then, as we get closer to Milan, they say, actually, we can't go to the main Milan Central Station because of X problem, some technical issue. I to this day, I have no idea what happened. So, I couldn't get anybody to tell me what was going on. So, we have to divert the train. So, fuck. Well, okay, I guess I'll just get off from the station before, because Milan, again, it's a big city, so it has several stations. So I got off from the station before Milan Central Station, and so I got off the train, and I said, well, am I going to walk, or am I going to take a subway? So I asked somebody, they told me just as fast as I was to take the subway, so I took the subway. So I went downstairs to go try to find the subway, and then I'm staring in front of this map, and it's got a bunch of lines on it, and then none of them make sense. So I'm like, okay, which of these things goes to Milan Central Station? And I kind of just view, and I start walking. I figured if I found somebody like at a ticket counter or something, they'd be able to point me in the right direction. But then as that happened, a few other people walked up behind me and looked at the same map, and they were speaking English. So I said, hey, maybe this group knows more than I did. So I started talking to them. There were 3 Swiss folks, and they were talking to each other, and so I decided to tag along with them. So they're going to, because they were trying to get to the same place I was, because they were trying to get home.
Yep.
Or at least the 2 of them were trying to get home, back to Zurich, back to Switzerland. And so I tagged along with them. We all got on a train, got to the subway, and got over to Milan Central Station. It was about the time that that other Zurich train was going to take off. So they told me, like, you know what, just we'll be fine, because I didn't want to feel like I was just like, goodbye,
them.
like, and they were helping me too. And they said, you know, your best bet's just to go see if you can catch that train. Go, good luck. Have a nice day. So I bust ass through Milan Central Station, just sprinting, and I get to the train, and I try to open the door, and it was locked, and then it just takes off. So, wah, wah. So I was just a minute too late. And then the other group catches up to me, and then I said, no, it's gone, we're screwed. So we have to wait tonight for the next train to Zurich, because there was another one going to Zurich that night, because I saw it on the itinerary, that I knew there was another one going there. So then we found out that we could switch our tickets to the next train because, you know, of all the chaos, and it was basically fucking up everybody's schedule. And so the one guy left. He was taking a plane going somewhere else in Milan, or from Milan to somewhere else. So he said goodbye. There's the other two Swiss guys. And one middle-aged gentleman was elderly. So they bought me supper, hung out in the train station. They're super generous folks. I mean, the most wonderful people. If they ever happen to watch this, thank you so much. They're super generous. They bought me supper, and we waiting for the next train. We went together on the train to Zurich, and now they were trying to get to a town called Baden, which is also in Switzerland. And they figured just take the train. What they were going to do is they were going to take the train to Baden, but obviously it didn't work, so they figured they'd just take the train to Zurich and then just try to figure it out from there. I didn't know at the time Baden's basically a suburb of Zurich, so it's not that far away. So we get there, get on the train, we go. It's a 3-4 hour train ride. Get out of there, and it's about midnight, a little after midnight. Now, my original plan was to just take a train to the airport and just hang out for the night. Just sleep it off in the Zurich airport and be cool. Here's the thing. I didn't know this, and this is a good travel tip. You might want to look ahead on something like this. Trains stop in Zurich at midnight. They don't actually run after midnight. And it's because nobody's taking them. It's an economy thing, I think, and you know,
Their cities do sleep.
Their cities do sleep. I think it might be a noise thing too. That and also no planes take off from Zurich or anywhere in Switzerland between the hours of midnight and I think 6 a.m. because of noise. Because they all got together and voted like, hey, let's not have any planes coming in or out, which is really interesting because like there's a lot of little villages that are close to the Zurich airport and it's pissing a lot of people off. So they stopped that. So there was a pretty good chance that the airport wasn't going to be open either. So I'm like, well, fuck. Now I don't have anything, you know, what am I going to do? It's like 40 degrees out. You know, it's not like I have any winter clothes here with me. And though I've been able to brave the vast majority of their winter or their fall weather because I'm a Minnesotan and just have, you know, iron stone skin.
Ice water in your veins.
Right, exactly. It's starting to get chilly. And the gal, the two guys, they said, why don't you just come stay at my place for the night? We'll bring you to the train station in the morning. And so we did. So her brother, the younger gal, her brother came and picked us up. Drove us over to Baden. Again, super, thank you so much. Drove us over to her place, and I slept overnight. So she's a kindergarten teacher. Was it kindergarten? Yeah. Anyway, an elementary school teacher. She's a wonderful person, absolutely wonderful person. And she let me stay the night at her flat. And next morning, I was able to clean up and have breakfast. And she brought me on the train station, bought me a ticket to the airport, which is really nice for her too. And I got to the airport and made it on time for the plane.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely wonderful. So fucking generous of them, and so Swiss people are so generous. They're so nice.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Oh, crap. I mean, I couldn't believe I was just struck by this act of kindness. I couldn't. To this day, I'm still just dumbfounded by how nice they were, how giving they were about it.
Yeah, that's really cool. So what's next?
So what's next? New Zealand is my next big adventure. I'm 1 walk from Hobbitown to Mordor, which is, I found, about 90 miles, give or take. So, week trip, give or take.
Yeah.
Hi there. Just wanted to put a quick end cap on that video. Unfortunately, there was an issue with the camera and it cut off a little bit short, but the good thing is it was only about a minute left and we had just wrapped up about a minute or two after that. So I don't feel like I missed anything, but I want to thank Red for getting that interview rock solid, knocked out. Did a really good job. I was so happy to retell some of those stories, and I've got so much more to say. There's a ton of little nuances that happened in that story, a lot of crazy things, a lot of friends made, a lot of truly wonderful things that happened, and I have a lot of thoughts left, so stay tuned to the site, rivetcitylimited.com, and follow us on the social medias, Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. You'll find us there, Rivet City Limited, and we'll be posting more updates about my travels and a bunch of other stuff as time goes on, so check it out. Alright, Riveters, take care, see ya.